See some of you are coming in. I want to introduce our guest speaker. Last year I was looking at books on this guy, wonderful writer. One of my favorite spiritual writers is Howard Thurman. He's a distinguished African American from the, who in the 1930s went to meet Gandhi in India and learn about nonviolence. So I was looking for books about Howard Thurman and Gandhi, and I found our guest speaker a year ago, and I contacted him, so now he's here. Let me introduce him. He'll be around all day. He'll be in the faculty room following today's morning meeting, and then be around here for lunch, and then to about 2:30. So if you want to talk with him, he's a fascinating person. So Quinton Dixie is an associate professor of religious studies at Purdue University in Fort Wayne. Professor Dixie specializes in American religious history and has written on a wide range of topics, from African American civil rights movement to the history of Black Baptists in the United States. Among the publication he edited was a volume called The Courage to Hope, co-edited with Cornell West, as well as a companion to a PBS documentary, This Far by Faith, co-authored with Juan Williams. Currently, Dr. Dixie is working on a religious biography of Harlem, exploring the ways urban spaces transform religion and vice versa. Please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Quinton Dixie.
Good morning. Good morning. Tough crowd. I had a speech that I normally do when I go out and talk about my Thurman book, Thurman Travels to India, but after speaking with my new bestie, my new bestie, Bob, I decided to change things up a little bit. I guess the best way to begin this brief talk is with a confession. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to start by telling you all I'm a bit envious of you. Not because you go to a place with a Harry Potter gate, nor simply because you have 2 hockey rinks instead of the customary one, but because you get to engage in an ongoing experiment in community that for me lies at the heart of a first-rate educational experience. Growing up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, a good education for me consisted of short night sleeps, long morning bus rides to the other side of town, across the tracks, and over the river to a neighborhood where a few of my classmates looked like me. We studied together, played sports together, sang in the choir together, grew up together. But I can honestly say we never really knew each other. For at the end of the day, we retreated to our neutral corners where we regrouped to engage one another the next day. At a place like Taft, there is no retreat, no hiding place, no escape from the round-the-clock experience of togetherness, no way to really get out of each other's faces. And because of this, I venture to say you all are lucky. You get to engage in the creation of community in a way most young people your age do not. And this is a good thing, right? Don't answer that. Instead of hearing your answers, I want to tell you about a man named Howard Thurman and what he thought about community. Thurman was born at the turn of the century in a Florida community deeply divided by race. Thurman only made it through the 7th grade in his hometown schools, for there was no 8th grade for blacks. If they went to 8th grade, the city fathers thought, you would have to build them a high school. Imagine that. After passing a set of equivalency exams, Thurman had to move to another city that had a high school for African Americans. Through high school and undergrad at Morehouse College, his education was good, but all black. Yet he longed for more. He had a vision of a better world, one in which the boundaries that divide us were obliterated. In 1923, Thurman got his first crack at this kind of community when he enrolled at Rochester Theological Seminary in upstate New York. Back then, even training for ministry was segregated. But Thurman was fortunate to get into a school that openly admitted blacks that applied. Well, at least 2 of them. That's correct. Rochester Theological Seminary had a policy of accepting 2 blacks per year. That way, administrators were able to avoid deciding which white student would be forced to live with a black person. By the end of his first year there, Thurman made a bold choice to room with 2 white classmates from across the hall. As expected, they were called to the dean's office and implored to end this silly little experiment in Christian brotherhood. But they refused. That was a joke, by the way. Thank you. But they refused. And that was it. By refusing to participate in a tradition that was truly backward, they ended housing segregation at their school. Thurman would repeat this practice many times. He protested when his own daughter attended Vassar College and was paired in a dormitory with the only Jewish student in her class. Yes, Jews and blacks were grouped together as others. Moreover, in the midst of World War II, Thurman helped establish one of the first intentionally interracial congregations in the United States, the Fellowship Church for All Peoples. Not a white church with a few black members, nor a black church with a few white members, but one with a black co-pastor and a white co-pastor, one where power was shared equally between the 2 groups. By the time his life was over in 1981, Howard Thurman had crossed many boundaries, including being named the first black dean of any kind at a predominantly white college or university. Thurman's entire life and career was a quest for community, an effort to find God in others and to be the light he sought. But where does community begin? How does one go about creating community? Or is it even possible? One of the first steps, Thurman thought, in this process is non-cooperation with evil. Thurman thought every individual has an obligation to call evil out when he or she sees it and to refuse to comply with it. This begs the question, what is evil? Well, Thurman responded, anything that doesn't affirm, but rather gnaws at and erodes human dignity, is evil. It can be an individual action, or it can be something systemic, but if it ultimately destroys rather than builds up human worth, then it is evil. Guess what, people? That's a lot of stuff. This leads me to another confession. I feel I'm in safe space here at Taft, and so I won't be ashamed to let you all know that I'm a hip-hop head. There, I said it. I love hip-hop music. And off and on for about 10 years, I have taught a course called Hip-Hop and Spirituality. In it, we explore the prophetic tradition within hip-hop and show how some artists use the music to talk about religion, God, and the ways we have lost step with God's design for humanity. If I am really honest, however, I would have to admit that I like all kinds of hip-hop, not just the songs with socially conscious lyrics, but also the tracks with ear-bursting bass beats and mindless wordplay. I even like Big Sean's catchy tune. You know what I'm talking about. I don't F with you, right? While I like the song, it certainly leaves me a bit conflicted, right? Yes, there are some parts to the song that are a little misogynistic, but wait, a little misogynistic? Is that even possible? But it's not meant to be serious when he says, you little stupid ass beat, I ain't effing with you. He's actually just being playful, comical. Really? But that beat though, you gotta admit, the beat is catchy. But is listening to the song participation in its misogyny? I got it. I won't buy any hip hop that is misogynistic. I won't give a record industry that objectifies women any of my money. I'll just download it for free. Yeah. I think you understand the point, right? Howard Thurman says in order to live out the kind of community that respects others requires non-cooperation with evil. But he didn't say it would be easy. There are difficult choices to be made if we desire to make the world a better place, a place where all of us are affirmed. But when those individual choices turn into collective action, it can be a powerful tool for change. We've seen examples of this recently. At the University of Missouri, a black graduate student grew frustrated with the lack of serious attention school officials paid to the pain caused by what he saw as individual and institutional racism. Having what he perceived as few options, he chose to stop eating until something was done to address the situation. He was prepared to die if necessary for a cause he believed to be good. In a show of solidarity, graduate students, most of them white, rallied to support Mr. Butler. They pitched tents on the school lawn near the administrative offices, so it would be impossible for the president and others to ignore their pleas. As the movement spread around campus and groups started to organize, the black football players at Mizzou decided they would show solidarity by refusing to participate in any football-related activities, including practice and games, until Mr. Butler decided to eat. Then, in an amazing display of camaraderie, the white football players and coaching staff joined their black teammates in the walkout. From that point forward, things began to move at lightning speed, and it's safe to say that change has come to the University of Missouri. Even though the movement had been going on for months, one individual choosing to create a new world by refusing to live by the practices and customs of the old one led to a chain reaction. What the students at Missouri understood is that they are linked together, bound up in a web of mutuality, in a world where your dignity is tied to mine. That which affects one affects us all. They knew that silence is a form of compliance, and they could not afford to go along with business as usual. But has change really come? This is where it gets interesting. Howard Thurman believed that in order for a community to be genuine, a fellowship rooted in love had to exist. This goes beyond establishing rules and regulating behaviors. This means people must take the risk to open up to others and be known. Without an effort to get to know one another beyond a surface understanding, we can never produce change or a sense of community that's long-lasting. We can make it against the law to discriminate, but it is not against the law to be racist. But should it be? And if you make it illegal, have you eradicated racist attitudes? We can ban Big Sean from the radio, but how do we get him to stop calling women names meant to hurt them? How do we get others to see the harm in it, even if it does not directly impact them? When Howard Thurman was a professor at Howard University, he was invited to lead a delegation of blacks to India, Burma, and Ceylon. A full 15 years before Martin Luther King Jr. made his pilgrimage there, Thurman went. But make no mistake about it, this was no pleasure trip. He and his colleagues were invited by the student Christian movement in India, in those countries, with the intent of learning about the black experience and how religion and spirituality had sustained a people for whom oppression was a daily occurrence. Many Indians at the time thought that the answer to their freedom was in overthrowing British rule by any means necessary. If they could just get the British out of their land, everything would be all right. But what Thurman knew too well was that how one does things is just as important as what one does. Finding a way to expel the British would not keep them from feeling whites were superior to brown people. No, one had to love the adversary into change. One had to wager that one's capacity to love and absorb what is meant for evil is greater than another's capacity to hate. This is not a passive, weak love. To the contrary, it is a love that mandates respect, but also gives what it expects from others. It is a love that doesn't understand when people say, well, that's not my issue, or that's not my problem. Well, people, I'm here to tell you that that is what it means to have community. Your problem is my problem. My pain is your pain. Your loss is my loss, and my victory is yours. Why? Because community means we chose to be connected. We share all things, both good and bad. So, in closing, and I'm keeping it brief because I was told you guys can get coffee if you want it, if it's short. So my question for you today is, what kind of community do you want to live in? Is it one where people's actions are tightly conscribed, but their attitudes never adjusted? Is it one where people are polite, but rarely choose to get to know anyone outside their comfort zone? Or is it a community that understands that effective learning and physical and psychological comfort are often mutually exclusive? You don't go to school to be comfortable, you go to school to learn something. Is yours a community where people ask tough questions, have painful but necessary conversations, confront, argue, fight, cry, but grow together, love each other, and truly want the best for one another? Well, I haven't been here long, but it seems that this is exactly what you have here at Taft. Not a perfect community, but one committed to the idea of envisioning a better world. And for that, I envy you. Thank you.